Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So a quick little PSA at the beginning, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and early Saturday this week, I will not be around. I am visiting New Jersey. My father's birthday is coming up, and I want to be with my family for my father's birthday, especially with how rough it's been the past few months. So just letting you guys know that for the Octopath content. I won't get to start producing it until Saturday, and even then, I also have MapleStory 2 next Wednesday. We have the live letter for Final Fantasy XIV next Monday, so on the 16th for the live letter and the 18th for MapleStory, so it's going to be crazy. On top of that, we've hopped back into Warframe over on the Twitch side of things, although on the YouTube side of things, not really sure what kind of content I could produce. I'm far from an expert on anything in that game, so it almost feels kind of weird to be producing content on something I'm not that knowledgeable about. So people have asked for it when I made the other video about it, so we'll see. Maybe when the new content comes out, I can post some findings and stuff like that. But until then, it's mostly just going to be something that I kind of take to myself and enjoy. Also, we're not doing this week live on Twitch, so I'm going to do my sponsors here, and that way after the final question, because we actually have a lot of questions over on the forums this week, I can just wrap up the video there and then get working on some other things, because I'm pretty behind because I started this day very late. So, of course, we have our Patron of Light, Khuja and the Advent FC on Jenova. Thank you for being the Patron of Light, as you always have been. There's going to be an image on the screen right here for those of you over on YouTube. Should have just said there's going to be an image on the screen here because there's nothing like I'm not doing it on Twitch, so it's not like there can be no image on the screen for Twitch right now. Thank you, Khuja. Appreciate your long-term support. We also have a ton of sponsors. We also had some names mixed around. I know I received some messages from some people, some name change requests. So I'm probably going to end up having to mess around with those a little bit because I haven't actually had the time to go through the messages. So if your name's not here, if you sent me a message, if it's not changed properly, just know that I do know that I received a few messages. I just haven't had the time to go through and actually make the changes. If I remember some of the messages off the top of my head, though, I'll definitely get those done right here. So anyway, we have our other sponsors as well. We have our standard sponsors. We have the Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of Baron FC from Zalera, Fray Blackheart, Cidus, Oreo, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, Sploda, That Lane Weeb, Ashen, Emiya of Cerberus, Argoti, Tristam of Midgardsormr, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. I know there's another name on that list. Let me see if it pops up on my email real quick. I know we have Mant here, who I don't know if I have another shout-out name for them, but we have Mant. And we have Manny and Manny. So I know we have those two. So those actually popped up message-wise for me right here on the front. I know I can see another name here. Maybe I should have just taken care of it. But I like to leave little mess-ups like this in the video because you guys get to see that. You guys get to laugh at me a little bit. And that's perfectly okay. Yeah, so I see quite a few new things here. Oh, boy. But anyway, let's move on over into the next set. We have our elite sponsors, Just One Fox, Shadow Link on the Tonberry server, Dom, Asuka Wake from the Jenova server, Lamilia Nella of Midgardsormr, Sarah and the Avalanche family on Malboro, Janhyua Yotsuyu. Here's another one that I know for certain was absolutely changed. We had Zamek of Organization 13 for the next one. We have Kifka and the Great Eagles on Exodus, Dark Graver, Katayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rah Xephon from Exodus, Rynoet Westos the Purple Warrior, Eragic Red Steel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiac, Sour Cream and Chives from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Goetia Valfer of Siren, Hirsch First of Fairy, Phoenix Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiac. We also have our premium sponsors, who I know we have a new one for, and I absolutely don't want to miss that. So let me just 100% get the name right here. Cassandra Hoshi of Leviathan. There we go. That's the new name on the list. See, I managed to pull it together. For our other premium sponsor, we have Kano Zuki on the Jenova server, Starla on Coerl, Thal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Diablo, Holy Tabasco, Red Thorn Asura, Kernai Oni, Askin Hawk, Oscar, Crash015, Mustang, the Serenity FC on Ultras, Kat Kazuma, Serial Kira, Ignis Fairgun from the Diablo server, Blesher of Fanfrit, Not Quarters from Excalibur, Corvus Moonscar, Private Mikey Spike, Nadia Kirasame, Rudy Rudiger, Tin Colossus, Killer Hackman, Roll Jr., Ramil Gaming, and Kiltastic Jones. Lots of names on that list. Thank you all for supporting the stream through hashtag demonetized. I appreciate it a lot. It helps with the YouTube side of the content creation a lot. But anyway, with that, we have like 15 questions over on the forums this week, so that's why I'm not doing the Twitch live one this week. So let's get started with those. All right, question number 1. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hello. Just recently got a Switch and was hoping for a recommendation for a must-have game. I have Breath of the Wild, but was curious if you had any suggestions. Octopath Traveler comes out this Friday. If you're into turn-based RPGs, absolute must-buy. If you're into other Nintendo games, honestly, I think Mario Odyssey is definitely a game worth picking up. Warframe just announced that it would be coming free to play to the Switch, so assuming that the port ends up being good, which the company that's porting it has a pretty good track record, so we're hoping for something good. That's a free-to-play game for the Switch, so you'll be able to pick that up. Switch actually has a lot of good games. There's a lot of games you could, of course, have on another console, but if you just look through the library, I mean, I just named 3 or 4 right there, and honestly, that doesn't even scrape the surface. Switch has got a ton of great games. It's just the Switch itself was more powerful. See, I guess I could say Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I didn't like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I thought it was a very mediocre game, to be honest, but a lot of people love that game, and I just don't. So try it for yourself. See if you like it. Maybe you'll like it, because my opinion doesn't matter for shit. It's just my opinion. But those are just a few, just to name a few. Question number 2. Hello, Mr. Happy, longtime watcher, big fan. Got a lot of my 14 news and info from your channel, so thank you for being thorough and informative. Thank you for supporting the channel. I believe a few Mondays back, you made a brief mention of the 14 team having to do a graphics overhaul in the future to keep the game looking good. My question is, how would they go about doing that? So I didn't say they had to do one. I believe what you're referencing is when we were talking about one of the questions from the live letter, where people were asking if there would be more details for the character creator, if they'd be doing an update to the character creator. And they said that they're not really planning it right now because there's a lot of options that would be kind of stunted with the way the current graphics system is done. And that if they were to do a graphics overhaul, they would probably overhaul the character creator at the same time. So that would be a pretty massive undertaking. It wouldn't just be, I mean, you could technically do it as a mega patch, but knowing Square Enix, they're the kind of company that I wouldn't even be surprised to see them do a whole new client for something like that. Unnecessary, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them do it. Don't expect it anytime soon because there's no mention of them doing it. It was only a, if we were to do this, we would have to do a graphics overhaul kind of thing. And it wouldn't, just don't expect it. Just don't, I didn't say what you thought I said, so just don't hold any expectations for the near future. Question number 3. Hello, Happy. Longtime viewer, first time asking a question. How do you think Dark Knight would work if it was a DPS instead of a tank? I actually don't think it would be that different because the way tanks play right now, they basically are blue DPS. You know, you focus on trying to get as much DPS out as you can while popping defensives to keep yourself alive when necessary. So I guess the one big thing is a lot of their defensive skills would probably be changed to either flat out utility skills or DPS skills that they would be weaving in between. With the amount of times you press the Dark Arts button now, it would probably wouldn't be that much different. I don't know, with Dark Knight, I think Dark Knight is one of the tanks. I don't think any of the tanks would play that significantly different. I think the big thing is that they wouldn't have defensive cooldowns, so they'd have to have something else in its place. What those things are, I don't know, but playstyle-wise, I'd expect them to say very similar because of the way the game functions right now. Question number 4. Greetings, Phoenix, the server, not the town. I'm not Phoenix. Also, what about the Primal? So you're excluding a lot of people from that opening statement. Hello, by the way. I'm not from Phoenix, but I'll say hello regardless. Longtime viewer, first time asking the question. Couldn't come up with any good bonuses, but I wish you strength and motivation through rough times. Appreciate that, especially with what we said here at the start of the video. It always helps to get those good well wishes. So very much appreciated. I play Bard, and when I do stuff with lots of people, for example S ranks, I have to use dots at the very beginning of the fight, and they don't seem to apply. Yeah, this is a big problem with the way that displays actually work. So on hunts, a lot of the times, even if you're one of the first people to apply a dot, the sheer number of dots or debuffs that are being applied right at the start generally make it so yours, for some reason, just deprioritize. They don't appear at the top of the list. You'll notice then when you try doing them over and over again, they don't actually apply. What you need to do is you need to wait for them to wear off naturally, which in the case of some hunts, the hunt barely survives long enough for you to do that anyway. Just know that if you want them to be visually there, that's what you'll have to do. I think it's something they should work on fixing because it is very annoying. Luckily, it's on content that it doesn't really matter on because hunts is like, there's never like, oh my goodness, I need this DPS to beat this hunt. That just doesn't happen. There is a limit to how many debuffs an enemy can have. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. It's been a while. I think it was 60 at some point. I don't know if they changed it at all. But yeah, that's what you're going to have to do to get your dots working in cases like those S-rank hunts. If you apply the first ones and they don't appear, you can just keep acting like they're there and just do your refreshes on occasion, or you'll need to wait, in the case of the Bard dots, to 30 seconds. You need to know that it's been 30 seconds. Ooh. Don't worry, nothing that bad. It was just, I had lunch before this, and I had hot sauce, and it's closed, so don't worry about that. And I talk with my hands a little bit too much. But yeah, you'll be fine if you just do that. And yeah, the dots work. I'm pretty sure they do work normally, even when they're not displaying in this one case. It's just that it deprioritizes them. Feel free to correct me in the chat, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. All right, question number 5. Hellosh once more, Mr. Happy. How art thou doing today? Tired, but doing. Thank you. Hopefully you're doing well. Okay, real talk. I'm sorry about last week's dumpster fire questions. I don't even remember, dude. That's what the questions last week. I just remember going through them and being like, you know what? These are questions. I'm going to answer them. That's about all I can do. I hope these questions are better than last week's. All right, let's see. 1, considering the... all right, well, now I gotta kind of scroll up. Hopefully no one had read those. It's spoilers at this part right here. Generally with spoiler warnings, it needs to be a little bit more so. So I'll close that. When I do this again, it means spoilers are over. Spoilers starting now. So question number 1, concerning 4.35 story Hildebrand spoilers. So with Yojimbo now involved in the Hildebrand antics, I believe the obvious question needs to be asked. Okay, you didn't even ask the obvious question. Who would win in a fight, Yojimbo or Gilgamesh? Assuming that Gilgamesh has the actual Excalibur of Legend, he never has the Excalibur of Legend. Even when he does have it, I just don't believe it. And Yojimbo is funded by Ash's bank account. What the real question that should be is, does that mean we get a Yojimbo trial? That should have been the obvious question. And the answer is hopefully. Obviously, we have the dungeon fight against Yojimbo, but you know, the real 8-man trial I wouldn't be opposed to instead. Who wins that? I don't know, man. Yojimbo's... I was gonna say he was really serious, but with the way the Hildebrand story panned out, it's a little bit different. I don't know, man. Gilgamesh is pretty good at coming back from fights, but Yojimbo's got Zenmato. I guess it depends on which weapon. If Gilgamesh actually has Zentetsuken and Yojimbo has Zenmato, then it's a draw. If Gilgamesh doesn't have Zentetsuken and Yojimbo does have Zenmato, then Yojimbo. So I'm gonna go with that. Let me just make sure the next question doesn't have too many story spoilers going on. They got 4.0 stuff. You know what? Story spoilers over. I'm not gonna include the 4.0 stuff as story spoilers because it's been like a year at this point for the next parts of the question. All right, so anyway, for the second question here, we're this far in Stormblood's life cycle, was really hoping to see Vidargelt get some main scenario action, similarly to Estinian and Heavensward. Do you believe that Vidargelt will get some main scenario screen time? I don't think so. He's not super interested in being, taking his father's role in Alamigo itself. I, too, expected the same thing, but when you actually do the monk storyline, he's far more concerned with the Brotherhood of Monks. You know, he's not as concerned about ruling because he knows that his father has had the reputation that he had and that it would probably bring more contempt than good for him to actually be in charge of Alamigo. He wants to see Alamigo free, and he wants to see the evils of his father undone, but he's more concerned about monks than he is about being a leader of Alamigo. So I don't think he's going to get any time because he's pursuing that path. I'd love it if he did. I'm just not optimistic that he will in any way ever be involved with the Alamigo main story quests. Do you have anything else? As a retribution to last week's fast food, listen, don't have to apologize for it. It's just not my preference. All right. San Diegan fish tacos, though, that is nice. All right, question number 6. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hey. It's been a while since I asked anything. I asked about how to get into rating a while back, and happily say I've successfully accustomed myself to 24 mans. Pretty much shy, in pretty much every raid shy of Savage. Well, you got to start somewhere. Savage is where it really becomes raiding, you know, but you got to start somewhere, you know. Anyway, my question may be a little difficult to answer, but it's about housing and the time restriction. I don't have a house, so I'll do what I can, but I can't promise anything. Square put on the newly open plots. I guess I just want to know if there's any hard numbers out there, or some website, or maybe a YouTube video of how long these actually last. Maybe some kind of experimentation done to figure out these numbers, if it's just true random. My small C recently got to rank 6, and we want to get a house, but the time restriction makes the whole... I guess I'm not really sure which time restriction, because when I first started watching this, I assumed that you meant how long it takes for a house to become demolished. Now I'm assuming you're talking about when a new plot becomes available after relinquishing a plot. Or how long before you're allowed to transfer plots. See, this is the thing, because I've never dabbled in housing. I'm not really a great authority on this question, because it's not knowledge I ever keep privy to myself, because I don't do it. So I guess without knowing, I don't know which time restriction you're talking about, because there are multiple time-related gates when it comes to housing. So without that information... I guess I can't really give you exactly the answer that you're looking for. So my apologies, but I'm sure someone in the comment section will have kind of figured this out with someone who's a little bit more privy. So I definitely go to the comment section of this video and see if anyone has anything to say about it, because they might be able to help you a little bit more than I will. Question number 7. Hello, Mr. Happy. Long time no ask, but I hope you've had a nice day so far when you read this. Yeah, it was all right. I slept in late, but only because I couldn't get to sleep last night. So it's 50-50 whether or not that's good or bad. My question for you this time has to do with the final tier of Omega. We know that 4.4 will feature the final Omega raid tier. We are not getting another ultimate fight for the rest of the 4.x expansion. I think we all know where you stand on your overall feelings about the story approach we have for Omega, but I want to ask you about the possibility we haven't seen since 2.x. It's possible the final tier of Omega, there will be 5 fights like we had back in the Binding Coil. So we, just to be clear, we did not have 5 fights in the very first coil of Bahamut. We had 5 instances, but Tier 3 was specifically designed to make it feel more like an area and less like just encounter after encounter after encounter. Obviously, we all said Turn 3 was dumb and they never did it again. But they only designed 4 bosses for the coils of Bahamut. I'd also like, so let's get that part out of the way first. The rest of your question is, this would allow 7 fans to get their Sephiroth encounter as the end of the tier fight, and fit in with the statement, we will be fighting Omega to finalize the story. So the problem with that then becomes, if Sephiroth is anything but the last fight, it is a disservice to the character compared to the love and attention Kefka and X-Death got. So it doesn't matter if they do 5 fights and Sephiroth's the second to last one and Omega's the last one, because no matter what, they'd have to give Sephiroth the treatment as if he was the final boss. Otherwise, it just loses all of its epicness of being like the majority of the patch. So I don't think there will be 5 fights. Omega will not be a pseudo ultimate, because ultimate literally is only there to recycle assets they've already used, and Omega is not an asset that they've used in terms of combat before. So no and no, basically no to everything you've suggested. Not that it can't happen, but the question is, do I think it will happen? And it's a hard no. There's nothing to suggest that there's going to be any sort of focus on getting Sephiroth out there just for the sake of doing it. I have a feeling he will appear. I have a feeling a lot of the end bosses will appear in Omega's arena towards the end, but that our ultimate goal is to finish our encounter with him, and that he is going to be our focus. I expect some crazy shit to happen in the Omega encounter, at least in terms of story and in terms of visuals and all that stuff, but no, I don't think anything that you suggested even has a remote chance of happening, just from the way that they've constantly described their development process for their raid tiers. So that's it. It's not probable. I don't even think it's possible, to be honest, but I'm not the developer, so I don't have the authority to say something's not possible. All right, on that note, question number 8. Hi, Mr. Happy, aka Mr. H, aka Haps, aka Mr. How you doing? You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You damn right. Do you think Stormblood will have any type of new content in 4.4 or 4.5, like Eureka, Heaven on High, Ultimate, other than the standard raid? So I'm afraid I actually don't think so. I have a feeling we're going to get another PvP map in one of those patches, and I have a feeling that Eureka, as it will continue in 4.35 or 4.36, 4.45 or 4.6, and 4.55 or 4.56, I have a feeling that we won't see another new type of content in 4.4 or 4.5, which upsets me, because with Heaven on High, we know we're not getting any more floors. Now, they said specifically we wouldn't be going past floor 100. Who's to say we couldn't get subterranean floors? I don't think that's going to happen, though. I'm totally down for the idea. And it's not to say they couldn't update Heaven on High with new things or reasons for players to go back. There's every possibility. This is one of those questions where, do I think there will be anything that is new like those things? No. Would it be possible? Absolutely. I can't ever rule those things out. But I do think 4.4 and 4.5 will be relatively standard. And I think this is something they really need to look at. Now that they have deep dungeons and they can start making those, we can hope somewhat more consistently in terms of their dev time and how much time they actually have to spend doing them. I'd like to see them visit some of the ideas that have been suggested. Obviously, Mythic Plus in World of Warcraft is very popular, and it's a bit difficult to implement reward-wise in Final Fantasy XIV unless you're very willing to construct a very specific, I guess, means through which the item level of the gear you get from there is enhanced as you go to the higher tier of Mythic Pluses, but they need more systems that support repeated play of content that otherwise would not see repeated play. Special achievements, leaderboards for Heaven on High and Deep Dungeon have been very popular. A PvE leaderboards are something that I feel people would definitely be down for, assuming there was enough motivation to actually do them. But they always want to look at, how do we get people to actually do this stuff? Just creating a leaderboard in their mind probably isn't enough. And so what they're actually going to do going forward for 4.4, 4.5, I hope they surprise me. I'm always hoping they surprise me. I like what's there consistently, but I am always hoping that they surprise me. And that's why a lot of people ask me, how do you play the same thing? It's because, well, that's what I signed up for in the first place with 2.x. When there's radical changes, there's always the concern of it being something that we don't like. We had Lords of Verminion and whatnot. So I'm glad that I'm a fan of the consistent content. Sorry, Aloha's right here at my feet. And he's looking up at me with those big, beautiful eyes right there. I'm hoping he'll meow into the microphone. No, he's looking at me like, fuck you, human. That's how he's looking at me right now. But I'm always hoping to be surprised. In a good way. Not in a bad way like with Lords of Verminion. So, no, I don't think we'll have any sort of new content. New maps for PvP, but that's it. Question number 9. Hello, Mr. H. When did Mr. H become a normal thing? Like, I didn't ask for this. With the release of Heaven on High and only being allowed to go to floor 30 as casual, I feel like SE have no confidence in its player base. So, I know what, I'll read the rest of the question because I already know what my answer is going to be. With Heaven on High, floors 30 to 50 can be achieved with a random match party. Eureka being a mob and Fate grind, it's almost a snooze fest. I fear the next step of Eureka will end up being the same. Please note, I know about the super hard content for the super hardcore, but the mid-level players and the casuals are giving easy dungeons, only allowed limited access to Heaven on High, pals like that. So I think your biggest mistake here is defining floor 30 as the end of your journey as a casual player. That is, you're limiting yourself before the game limits you. There's nothing to stop you as a somewhat more casual player, whether that be through skill or through time investment, to play with other people and make a fixed party. This isn't so much about being a casual as much as it is about being someone who doesn't play with other people or doesn't do it very often or doesn't have confidence to do it. So I think that was the first sort of error in the beginning of your question, and starting with saying that floor 30 is as far as I can reach as a casual. It's not that. You can do it as a casual. You could easily find groups that can do fixed parties for 40, 50, 60, 70, all the way up. And, make that group and make that commitment, because that's what it is for those higher floors. As for the matched party versus the fixed party, the reason why you can't do a fixed party is because those floors do pick up. And their game doesn't have a way of... Well, it does actually have a way, so what I was about to say is incorrect. The game doesn't have a great way of ensuring, with the way Deep Dungeon's queue system works, that you are going to have a composition or at least a group of people geared enough to adequately take on this challenge consistently every time. Yeah, you could argue that happens with 1 to 10 and 21 to 30 as well, but it's a little bit more reasonable in those sections because you can solo those sections beyond easily without much concern at all. The sharks in floor 1 through 5 are probably the worst part of the whole thing. So it's not so much that they don't have confidence, it's that the content's not designed for a random group of 4 DPS or 4 healers or 4 tanks to go through without any sort of set plan or consistency. It wants to encourage you to get together with other players and come together with like-mindedness in an MMO, which is kind of the whole point of an MMO. So it's not so much that, it's that you're not limited access. You are the one limiting your access to Heaven on High. If you don't want to make a fixed party, if you don't want to go out of the effort to find players to actually play with, that's not the game limiting you anymore. That's you limiting you. And so while I do agree with you, a match party probably could do up to floor 50 reliably, because after 51 and especially after 61 is where the difficulty really picks up. That's not the way the content's designed. That content is designed for fixed parties, just like a Savage Mode raid would be, well, I guess that's not the best example because you can technically use the raid finder, but it's designed with a certain goal in mind. And no matter what, finding a party is part of the job. So I don't know. I guess I don't really even understand what the question was. You just made a bunch of statements and now I'm commenting on them. So there was not even a question here. So I'm just saying things. So I'm done, I think. Question number 10. Hey, Uncle Happy. I don't want to be Uncle Happy. Stop it. Long time watcher, first time asker, so I have a bonus of a Gordon Ramsay steak. I approve. With the AntiFanFest tickets going on sale this coming Tuesday, my question is, how does the ticket buying experience work with multiple accounts? For example, my brother and I both want to attend. We have separate accounts. Do we both get the in-game perks if I purchase our tickets on just my account? The newest topic on the lodestone said a goodie bag and 2 in-game items. Are the codes in said goodie bag not strictly tied to the account making? So I'm pretty sure it's done per ticket, because it'd be kind of stupid to not be done per ticket, in my opinion. So you'd have to ask someone who's purchased tickets in previous years. I generally go as media, so it's not the same process for me. But that being said, the first year also I bought only my ticket, I feel like. So I actually don't remember if I bought multiple tickets the first year. Last year I went as media. That's a good question, kind of. I think there's no way possible that every ticket you buy doesn't come with a goodie bag, because you have to register the other people as well, and they have to be registered to get goodie bags. So I'm gonna say, yeah, you can buy both on one account. Just, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Question number 11, Subhaps, long time no ask. Do I have a returner bonus of all 3 unused Elder? I still haven't gotten a single Elder Magicite. I've done like 4 runs up past like 60 at this point. I did 1 run to 99, 1 run all the way to 100. I soloed to 61 on Monk, and I sold to 78 on Paladin. I haven't seen a single Elder Magicite, not once. I had on me when, oh, you died on 455 solo with 3 unused Elder Magicite. Ow. Dying on 55, that's really unfortunate too. No raising commander, no nothing. So I never did 100 plus in Palace of the Dead. I have, however, pugged up to 100 in Heaven on High through the Party Finder. Hey, team up with the other guy from earlier. My question being, what kind of mobs are there on the top floors of Palace of the Dead, and how do they compare to the Heaven on High mobs? Because unless you never hit mimics and have god tier luck, I can't conceivably picture anyone making it through 81 and 99. So the enemies actually on the higher floors of Palace of the Dead, some of them appear on the higher floors of Heaven on High. The apes, chimeras, God, what were the course mobs, which are kind of like the Matanangas in this one. The enemies are actually mostly similar. I'd say there's a few differences. There's also the wraiths, and I'm trying to think of other ones. There's a lot more instant death threat, I feel like, for soloing on Heaven on High, especially the warriors. Like those things are unfightable, the warriors in Heaven on High on 91 plus. If you have to fight one as a job and you do not have a witching commander, you will die solo against those warriors. There's a 0% chance of succeeding against those guys. So a lot of people felt the same way about Palace of the Dead 181 plus. Like, there's a lot of instant death scenarios where you're just like, well, I got fucked. Like, what am I going to do? I've got no Serenities because I got no items 3 floors in a row, and then I also got Gloom and no abilities. Like, what do? You're just instantly fucked. Like, how are you going to clear through the floor? Maybe you can just barely kill enough enemies without your ability solo, but bam, what if I ran out of steel commanders because I got fucked so many floors in a row, and then every gold chest I opened turned into a mimic? That's just how it is. Like, 81 plus and 181 plus in Palace of the Dead are virtually the same thing, where it comes down to, in terms of solo attempts, you got to have good luck with commanders, and you also have to be skilled enough to know how to use everything. How to avoid the different mobs. You know, what kind of aggro types do they have? How to get through certain rooms. How to get through horde rooms. How to pull mobs without getting instantly destroyed. How to manage your steel commanders. Like, how to burst things down in the fastest way possible to make sure you're maximizing your time. Like, those are all skills you have to have when you're soloing both Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High. And even then, it's going to come down to luck. You can't guarantee that any floor will go the way you want. What about now with Heaven on High? Like, what if you get a Hall of Fallacy and you have no safety commanders? You have to take the risk of stepping on a luring trap on purpose. Luckily, you can also use concealment commanders, but concealment commanders are another great solo tool that should be used to get through a floor where you're fucked otherwise in terms of speeding. So if you have to use it on those, there's so many different things that can fuck you that when somebody does solo to 100, it is going to be skill based, but they're also going to have had some luck along the way. That was how it worked for the Palace of the Dead. The 4 people in the entire world who have soloed Palace of the Dead 1 to 200, those same people, the people that solo through Heaven on High, it's going to be somewhat of the same. Those people are insanely good at the job and insanely good at those solos, but they got to get a little lucky while they're at it. So that's just how it is. It's going to look impossible until somebody gets it. You see how their floors actually went. How many Magicites did they get? How many Petrifications did they get? How many Concealments? How did they manage their Steel Commanders? All those things are going to play into when the eventual first Heaven on High 1 to 100 solo comes out. Question number 12. Hi, Happy. Long-time viewer, first-time asker here. Hey, thank you for asking a question. Been a fan of your work and contribution to the 14 communities. Please take care of yourself in the future, especially during rough times the past few weeks. That's like almost verbatim what we had before. I almost want to go, I'm scrolling back up. It's not even the same person, so thank you. Thank you for the well wishes, especially as you said with the rough times coming ahead, so much appreciated. I have a question on the limit break system. Currently, with the shields plus LB generation being an efficient method in speedruns, it has made certain jobs preferable over their counterparts. Probably most notably Paladin over Dark Knight for Divine Veil. That mentality seems to affect different parts of the game other than speedrunning without players knowing this reason. You're not even defining speedruns, you're defining meta. Because that's what meta is. Meta is, you know, players doing what is the best thing to possibly do for a specific strategy, speedrunning or clearing, and then it being enforced by the rest of the community that doesn't necessarily understand why something is meta in the first place. Like, it's like when people see, I won't play, it's like the thing we had last week where it's like, I won't play with a samurai, I won't let a samurai join my party because it's not meta. Some people do it just because it's not meta. Some other people do it because they've had nothing but bad experiences with samurai players. And it depends on the individual experience, but players like to enforce stuff without giving the individual player a chance. And that's a big problem, and it's a big problem in every online game, to be honest. A similar thing can be said about the no dupes requirement for LB generation of the Party Finder, other than beyond. I kind of understand no dupes, though. Like, for me, no dupes is more about you don't want more than one person in a completely random party of strangers competing for loot outside of the healers and the tanks. Like the DPS, if a DPS is making a group, that's just, they just do that because they're one of the roles that can actually try to enforce that kind of party. But for limit break generation, sometimes it's important. For Byakko, for example, you know, limit break generation, people want that LB3 so that they can skip that one phase with the second ad phase. So there's a whole lot of things that go into this, but certain uses of the LB system have been interesting. Byakko Extreme Uwu. Well, Uwu, you kind of have to use it a certain way. The only time you really have a choice about how to use your LB in Uwu is if you want to tank LB1 Etheric Boom. That's the only point where you actually have a choice. Everything else is like a forced, you have to do it this way. So what do you think about the current LB system? Is there anything you'd like to change? I don't really have a problem with it. Sometimes it's frustrating because sometimes we can do things exactly the same, but like maybe there's like a stronger shield, or maybe there's not as strong of a shield. Like there's a little bit of not RNG with it, but there's a little bit of lack of consistency with it, it feels at times. I don't really know if that's the right way to describe it, but I don't really have a problem with it, because it's something that I think about so seldom. I just kind of know, like, if we have multiple targets, we'll use the caster LB, you know, or we'll use the Bard LB if it ends up being a positional improvement. Do we just need to burst it down melee LB? Do we need a big mechanic to mitigate tank LB? Like, it's so self-explanatory that, like, the fact that the LB generation can be cheesed, a little bit frustrating with how it can be abused. Like, for example, 06 Savage with taking all your gear off and then putting it on and then going into combat with minimum health and shields. Like, shit like that is clever, but I don't really like that it works so efficiently, or that I don't like that LB strats are as effective as they are. Because it feels like they're at times effective for the wrong reasons. They're effective because you deliberately, I guess, kind of did something a certain way, and it just abuses the system overall. It could be argued that it's a skillful thing. I'm trying to think of an example. I saw one the other week, and I can't for the life of me remember it right now, so I guess I might as well shut my mouth on it. But I don't have a problem with it. I'm fine with the way it functions right now, and I don't see a reason to change it outside of just for the sake of changing it. Question number 13. Okay, hi Haps, and sorry for my poor wording on last week's question. I would rather prefer that Bloodspiller would do more damage with both stances active due to the higher potency, but it's okay, I guess. See, oh, okay, yeah, see, I'd rather it just not be effective, because they basically try to give it enough potency to mitigate grit. They might as well just say that it doesn't, it's same. I'm not going to repeat the question from last week. Anyway, we got a question roulette. A funny one, question, not a reference, and guess the Griffin. I'm going to go with question, not a reference, because I don't understand. What's your opinion on musical references? Oh, I don't know. I don't care. That's I guess I should pick a different question, because I don't care. Like, a musical reference is the same thing as when they pun. When Koji puns everything, he's either making a reference to a song or he's punning on something. I don't care. Just have fun with it. As long as it's fun. All right, so I guess if I'm having fun, I'll pick a funny one. Wouldn't it be funny if the devs comment on new mistakes like STDs? No, because then that's the devs shitting on the players, and they get some flack when they do it occasionally now, so No, it probably isn't a good idea for them to shit on their own player base, especially if they're shitting on the players that are, you know, maybe not as concerned with how they play the game and more concerned about just having fun. And that's probably the majority of their. You know, I'm just gonna do all 3 questions because I don't feel good about any of my answers here. Guess the Griffin. I played today on an alt level 27 Quarry Mill, and guess who I found? An NPC named Pharamond, who I got a quest from where he talked about medicine for another NPC named Galleon. That makes 2 suspects could be the second Griffin, but the thing is, the second Griffin was bred, colorized Pharamond. Do you think there's be more build-up? I have no idea what the question actually was, so I'm just gonna stick with what I answered before. It's about the dude who we saved, who becomes the fake Griffin, but I don't understand anything like that, so I'm gonna say no, I think it was fine, and I'm gonna move on to the next question. Question number 14. Hi, Haps. Hi. I jumped back in recently, finishing 4.2 and 4.3. While I enjoyed every moment of it, I can't help but notice the graphics are getting a bit dated after playing other games for the past 2 years. I know that a total model revamp of the old world would be impossible, but do you think they can do a major improvement of graphics with technologies that can be simply applied across the board in the next expansion? I mean, they just did that with the latest expansion. I don't know if you're playing on Max, because I don't think the game looks dated at all when I'm playing on Max. DX11, it also got to make sure you're playing on DX11, which, you know, that is another thing that plays into it. I mean, that's what they did. They literally just had that. And they do make graphical improvements per expansion. It's just a matter of people need to use the graphical enhancements. You're not playing on Max, you know, or if you're not playing on Max on DX11, you're not really going to notice it. And even if you do, I don't know. I don't think the graphics look dated at all. World of Warcraft has dated looking graphics. That's dated. I don't see Final Fantasy 14 being dated at all. And then there are people who do like 4K texture packs and stuff like that for people who are really anal about needing graphics. But especially considering what happened with 1.0, they definitely aren't trying to go down that route. They're keeping things sane, to say the least. Question number 15. Good days, Haps. Got 2 quick questions, non-14 related. What's your favorite male and female Warframe? I don't have a favorite male or female because I don't even identify them by genders. I just call them by their name. So I don't really care, personally. But you mentioned Valkyr for females, and Valkyr is just my favorite frame, so Valkyr for female, I guess? So, yeah, they'll go with that. Second question is, did you like Bless Online? Never heard your thoughts. Bless Online had a lot of kind of just basic ideas that seemed like they would work and they'd be okay, but the launch was just such a mess. It's really unfortunate because I didn't dislike it. It seemed like it was just a lot of things, a lot of ideas that were safe. And I play Final Fantasy 14, so the idea of doing a lot of things in terms of your development that seem safe, that seem like not super innovative, but, you know, just something that's consistent and good, that idea resonated with me. However, it did not execute that way when Bless Online actually launched here in the US. And I know a lot of people didn't have the expectation that it would because they've been following the game's progress in the other regions. I myself just always like to give developers the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that's what I'm doing with MapleStory 2. I didn't like MapleStory 1 at all, but I gave the developers the benefit of the doubt despite reputation, and the betas have been okay so far. So I try to go into it with that perspective, but it's just, I didn't think Bless was necessarily terrible. It's just that it didn't build a great reputation for itself. And then I don't think that it's been handling its beta or early access phases well so far. I haven't kept up in the last month or so, so maybe that's improved and I'm just unaware. But I do wish them luck, and I'd love to revisit it at some point. I actually wanted to revisit a few of them most recently. Rift I wanted to revisit because I loved Rift when it first came out. It just didn't have staying power for me. And I know they did some progression servers recently, which I thought was an interesting concept. Not necessarily classic, but they start from the older patches and then work their way up with people having a brand new opportunity to kind of get into the game. I think that's a better idea for me than classic servers, because the idea of like classic servers for WoW is that it stays classic. It doesn't eventually update to BC. It doesn't eventually update to Wrath. I like the idea of progression servers more than classic servers. So, like for example, what if 14 one day had... Although, honestly, this might be scary. Imagine 14 opening up servers that were just starting on 2.0 and then eventually 2.1, 2.2. Like, us already knowing everything, but I think newer players would like it. But I think for a game like Rift, it maybe works a little bit better. I don't know. I'm just going to shut my mouth now because I'm just rambling on. But anyway, yeah, those are my answers to both those questions. Hopefully you have a good Monday as well. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for Mondays with Mr. Happy. We're not doing a Twitch side of questions this week because we had so many questions on the forums itself. So thank you everyone for asking your questions. If you have questions for me for next week's Mondays with Mr. Happy, be sure to throw those in the forum that is in the description of the video below. They are not restricted to Final Fantasy 14 questions. Ask me whatever you want as long as it's within reason. And yeah, that's going to be a wrap for this week. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see all of you for next week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. And until then, take care.